This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd Neiman.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Ferd Neiman here again today with another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. I got another great guest for you. This guy's a broker with Yale Advisors. He helped me sell a park here at the end of last year, end of December. It's March 30th of 23 as we were recording. Friend of mine, great knowledgeable guy in the industry. Really happy to have him. Please help me welcome my guest, Ken Schefler. Ken, thanks for coming on, man.
For having me. It's a great honor. Yeah, I've listened to your show before. I think you're almost up to 200 episodes. It's impressive stuff. So I'm happy to be part of the history.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, I don't get paid by the hour when I record these podcasts, but I do have quite a few out there, and I've been wanting to get you on for a while. I knew we were going to get that deal closed, and that was a great story to tell. Just launched a case study on that a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
That particular deal.
Happy to talk about that later on. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know you well, but for those of my audience that do not, maybe give us a little more of your background, how you got into MH, what else you guys do, yourself in particular, and we'll go from there.
Sure, absolutely. So I had a whole career before I got into commercial real estate. Out of college, I actually got a job as a writer, and I was doing movie scripts and TV shows, believe it or not. Interesting life, where life takes you. So I did that for a little while, had some success, sold a bunch of stuff, but never really got stuff on the air or in the movie theaters. Not to go too deep into it, but that is a crazy, crazy business. You can make a lot of money and never get anything produced.
So you sold your stuff, meaning somebody else said this is worthy of production, but then they just never implemented. So then you never got the fanfare.
Exactly. So you'd sell a script, and then you meet with some development executive who said, I just got back from vacation with my grandmother. She went ziplining. It was a great moment. Can we put that in the script? And you're like, I just wrote a World War II script. I don't think it fits. And that's why the movie didn't get made, because you can figure out how to put a grandmother on a zip line on the battlefront. And I had so many experiences like that. And after a while, I just got frustrated, and I wanted to move into a career that had more control, it was more predictable. And of course, I chose commercial real estate.
Yeah, those wise. Again, pretty much every 2 weeks you get the same paycheck, right?
Exactly. So I had a buddy who was doing commercial real estate. He hooked me up with a big national brokerage. That's where I started, Marcus & Millichap. And I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with it. It's a good company. I was doing multifamily for a while, and it was just a very saturated, very overexposed business. You would try to reach out to owners, and they would get calls 10, 20, 30 times a day. I mean, nonstop. Right. So much that it felt like they were celebrities. They would change their phone every 3 months. It was pretty ridiculous. Wow. So very saturated, and I wanted to do something else. And I had a senior broker who was switching to manufactured housing. And so I made the jump with him. And ever since then, it's been great. I stayed at Marcus for a little while, loved the business, but there were just some things about the company that didn't fit. It's a really big company. I was looking for a little bit more, boutique feel. And so I one day looked around and said, who are the brokerages that are really doing well in this space? And I found Yale Advisors. I thought they were doing amazing stuff. They had great packages. They really kind of delivered on everything they promised. And I reached out to the founder, James Cook. Somehow sweet talked him into giving me an interview. A couple more interviews later, he offered me a job, and I've been there ever since. I've been incredibly happy working with him and working with everyone at Yale. And I cover the upper Midwest, which is generally from the Mississippi River west to Montana and Wyoming and everything in between. We do a lot at Yale. So we have a whole brokerage team, but we also have an equity team. So if you are an operator looking for some investment, or you're an LP looking for an operator, we can connect people. We have a financing team that does debt. So if you're looking for term sheets from banks, we have a whole team that has relationships with banks. We have our toe in a few other things that are kind of being developed, but we're trying to be a full service business where no matter where you are in the space, you can get some value from us. We can add value, all across the spectrum. So it's an exciting place to be. We're all very collaborative. It's fun. I'm having a great time.
No, that's great. No, I always enjoy working with you guys. You guys, you mentioned other firms as well. You got a lot of good firms out there. You guys are definitely one of them. And I know with James, with you guys have a fun party and dinner at a lot of the events. So it's always a
Yeah.
highlight.
So
If I make the guest list, and then anybody else is privileged enough to make the guest list, it's a lot of fun and
it's
a lot of
pretty
great network.
crazy. Yeah, it's actually coming up pretty soon. So at the end of April, we have we have the MHI Expo, and every year it's a big part of James's, overarching plan. He throws these two big dinners, one each night at the MHI conferences, and then also the one in November in Chicago. And he invites as many owner operators as possible. And so you have 50, 60 owners in a room just talking shop, telling personal stories. It's a pretty exclusive and impressive room to be in because there's so much experience and there's so much deal making going on. And we get a lot of feedback that that's one of their best events of the week from attendees. So it's great. And James has this thing about how he makes everyone stand up and tell a fun fact about themselves as we go around the room. And so at least from the brokers, from the employees of Yale, it's always a terrifying moment to come up because we do this every year. So we have to come up with a new fun fact for every single dinner every year. And we do 2 dinners at an event and 2 events a year. So 4 new fun facts every year. And I don't know about you, but I'm not that fun to have 4 new fun facts every year. So it's always nerve-wracking to come up with something, but it makes the night really enjoyable and we all have a lot of fun.
No, that's good. I've been to several of those, and some other groups do similar. I thought about doing one for the law firm at one point, and then I got a glimpse of what the bill was, and I was like, I'll just be a guest, man. It's quite
James
the event.
Is a very generous guy. He gives back a lot. He really thinks about the future when it comes to having a business plan. He really wants everyone he works with to feel like part of the family. It's a really good place.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, James, or not James, if you Ken, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't
take it for him.
Yeah, you keep talking about him. I wouldn't be doing my job. I didn't ask your view of the market as we're sitting here, end of first quarter, 2023. Interest rates are crazy. Inflation is even more crazy. What are you seeing in the marketplace right now as far as deal flow, deal pricing, closing ratio, and what are your views on the next quarter and or the rest of the year?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of brokers out there who they just say the same stuff every day. Everything's great, keep buying. And I don't think I'd be honest or transparent if I was just, selling the same stuff every day. The truth is that we are in a transitional market. I don't think we're transitioning necessarily up or down. I think the market's trying to figure out which direction we're going in. We had a bull market for a long time. Interest rates changed, and that changes the market. Buyers and sellers are definitely still figuring out who is leverage and where prices are going to end up, whether they're going to be closer to buyer expectations or seller expectations. But to be honest, especially in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of volatility and there's been a lot of flight from safe assets. I don't know if your viewers are paying attention, but the price of gold has gone way up. People are into Bitcoin again. People are trying to get their money out of banks for obvious reasons right now. And so there's actually a lot of capital on the sidelines that is looking to do something. And that puts upward pressure on sales and volume. And actually, it's not a bad time at all to get some deals done because there's a lot of money out there, at least from the seller's point of view. There's a lot of money out there that is looking for a home, more so than there was, even a couple months ago. So it's not, there's a lot of people out there saying, there's going to be blood in the water and sellers are going to be, on the hook and it's a buyer's market. It's a transitional market. It's not that at all. Actually, in the last couple of weeks, it's going in the opposite direction. And it may change again in another couple of weeks. But right now, in this moment, it's actually not a bad market at all. We're seeing a lot of deal flow and a lot of good action happen.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's not what you would assume, just because most commercial real estate has a debt component to it. Not that many of us are cash buyers, right? And if leverage is a key variable, typically 65 to 75%, maybe 80% of the capital stack. And If it's up, man, good grief, 200 bips or more from what it was a year ago, you'd think there'd be a correlation and cap rates would be up. Maybe not, dollar for dollar, but you'd think there'd be some cap rate increase.
There is. I'm not gonna tell you there's no cap rate changes going on. I think a lot more deals are getting done with seller financing. I think there's a lot more ways to be creative about that. And I think there are conversations happening between sponsors and LPs about, different ways, deals are going to happen moving forward. I think there's a lot of moving parts. Yeah, absolutely. debt is getting harder. Was harder, is harder now than it was, 6 months ago or whatever. But there are creative ways still to make deals, a lot of seller financing and some other ways to do it. So it's just, we don't know what the future is going to be, and nobody has a crystal ball. And so we're in a transitional market, and I would say the last couple of weeks are promising, but you never know. We'll see where it goes.
Okay, good insight, Sarah. What about the type of deal right now? Are there, are smaller deals being impacted differently than larger deals? What about certain markets? I mean, are people, still paying premium for premium markets, or are all markets being hurt, or tertiary markets different from utilities or park-owned homes? If you had enough data points in the last 90 to 180 days to see where that lands?
Sure. Look, I think a stabilized deal that is close to 100% occupied, that is city water, city sewer, those deals are going to be fairly similar to what we saw, before the big changes. There's always going to be a premium on those because those are the deals that as many buyers as you have want those. I mean, that's where the buyer attraction is. Buyers want the stabilized deals. They're easy to understand. There's a lot of competition for those deals that drives prices up. For the value add deals, it's a little trickier. Absolutely. It's harder to justify paying a premium for those deals. It happens. Every deal is case by case, but there's less future value being paid for some of those value add deals for sure. And so, in those cases, sellers are adding value themselves, trying to get closer to a stabilized price, or something creative is happening where it's seller financing, and it's a slow payout over time that eventually gets them to their expectation as far as pricing. Stabilized is definitely doing well. Value add is a little rockier, and it goes with the market. So my market, as far as location, my market is the Upper Midwest. It's everything except the Sunshine States, basically the nose of the country, and so those cap rates are just generally. That's why I like that part of the country too. Actually, those cap rates are just by and large higher. I mean, your coastal states, your Sunbelt states, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of cap rate compression, no matter what the interest rates are doing. There's just more chance to make money in those Midwest states. And so, because of that, there's a little bit more movement, in cap rates for the buyers because there's less demand. But it's all case by case specific, that's why I like the Midwest, is because buyers can really get into that market and make a lot of money, and there's less competition, and there's a easier way to if you're a new buyer, to start your business there, because mistakes are much bigger on the coastal states if you don't know what you're doing. So I think it's a great market, great location, and I still think there's opportunity. Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. Tell me what your views are, what your clients, or what you see from other buyers. I know you guys are mostly on the sell side. What do people think about vacant pads? I mean, you mentioned value adds, a little dicier, there's a lot more unknowns in a fully stabilized deal. 5-6 years ago, the conventional wisdom was a vacant pad's worth zero. It's worth less than zero, because you got to mow the grass and pay the property taxes, right? But then in the last few years, it's been, no, a vacant pad already has infrastructure. Infrastructure costs something, and in the right market, all you got to do is finish the job, right? So I got some parks right now that are full. If 5 homes went away tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, I got to go sell 5 more houses. Give me 60 days, and we'll be back to full occupancy. Other markets, it's like, wow, this is going to take a minute to fill 5 or in some cases 55 vacant spaces. So how does that come into the decision matrix?
Yeah, I think for a lot of buyers, it's really about the IRR in terms of how fast you can fill it and what that year 5 return looks like. And that's how the deal makes sense. I agree. Different markets are different. If you are in a market where you can get homes in quick, the value of that home goes up. If you're in a market where there's no economic drivers, there's no jobs, there's no reason for anyone to move there, yeah, those pads are pretty much close to zero. It really is case by case. It all depends. I think you said in the past, sometimes the answer to some questions is it just depends.
Yeah, that's the lawyer's answer to every question.
Yeah,
it depends.
So
there's a lot of truth to it. It's not just dodging the question. It's like,
absolutely. Look, we do represent sellers. We have a lot of questions about stuff like this. There's a seller who, bought a park from a mom and pop owner who didn't do much. They added a little value, but they didn't take it the whole way. How much is it worth if they want to move on to their next project? We get these questions all the time. And so it's really about the market. I mean, homes are easier to get now than they were, 6 months ago. So that actually adds value because you're not waiting a year because you only need 5 or 10 homes and someone in front of you is ordering 500 and you can't get any. Homes are easier to get these days, so it's easier to fill. So the value of those pads is up. It really kind of all depends. I mean, the short version is that it really just depends what the value of the park can be in 5 years, and what that IRR is, and how fast you can grow rents. It's about the market more than it is about the pad itself. I think.
All right, that makes sense. So obviously, a key variable that sellers and buyers are going to disagree on is going to often be price. Other than price, what are the key sticking points that are keeping you from transacting on a given transaction? Is it terms or financing or due diligence or other representations or warranties in the contract, or what is it? If I'm the buyer trying to, if you're at 5 million and I'm at 4.99, we're pretty much there on price.
Sure.
What are the other things that you may cause you to not choose me over one of the other buyers, perhaps even a buyer that's at a lower price?
Sure. Yeah. Look, we don't always. So we advise our clients. If we're representing the seller ultimately chooses who to go under contract with. But we obviously give them advice. We have a lot of experience. We've dealt with a lot of these buyers before, and so we can kind of lay the playing field for them. And when we look at the playing field, we look at who the buyers are. It's really about. It's often about the price. I mean, it's one of the big reasons. It's the big number on the top of the contract. But it's also about your due diligence period, how fast that is. Hard money down. I mean, no buyer likes to put hard money down, but that is a great way to separate yourself from the pack, is to put some hard money down. Any other terms as far as closing or things like that. I mean, you can do seller financing, and then you have all sorts of different terms as far as interest rate and amortization and all that stuff. But I mean, I think if you are, just to answer the question from a perspective of what can a buyer do to stand out, I think that getting as close as you can on price, but also doing some hard money down, even if it's a little bit, just to show that you're committed to the deal, and doing your research and answering all those questions about DD, asking all those questions about DD so I can answer them ahead of time before you put in the offer. I mean, just to back up a second, we represent sellers. And oftentimes we do a listing process where we have a marketing period for 5 weeks or so. And so in that period, we're having a lot of conversations with buyers about the property. And in order to stand out in that period, just be responsive, ask good questions, visit the property even. I mean, that would be a great thing to do. I can't say how many people, both on the brokerage side and the principal side, they do deals all day long. They never visit the property, ever. It's the craziest thing. I know it.
I can't, but I'm trying to buy a deal right now and it's from the seller and his price is, I don't know, $1.5 million, $1.6 million, and I'm around $1.3 million. And I don't really think I can go higher. But I visited the property. My acquisitions guy visited the property. He's been in my office 3 times for meetings. And I don't have the highest price and I don't have the most money or the best debt terms, but hey, I'm showing him I'm serious. Now I haven't won the deal yet, but I see that working on a seller finance deal, but I know on a broker deal, and I know in the recent transaction we worked on together, you had a list of, 75 potential buyers.
Yeah.
And if you'd have given me the top 5, if I had to pick the top 5 at the beginning, I'd have picked these 5. Yeah. And then those weren't the 5. And the one that was the clear top, like this company in my mind should have bought this park based on what they paid on a similar park nearby. Sure. And they didn't even have interest. It was like, what? You guys are the right guys. They're like, no, we don't want that one. It's too small. I'm like, really?
It's a crazy thing being in brokerage. Everyone comes to you and says, what's my park worth? Who's the buyer? And the truth is, it's not really our job to give definitive answers to those questions. Our job is to tell you through a process and get you an offer and have that offer definitively be the best buyer and the best price. So, we often work with sellers and we say, here's what we think the market will bear. But our real job is to take that property to market and make sure that we get offers from everyone who wants to make an offer, expose it to everyone, and only then will you really know what that offer, what that price is. Buyers, they have a criteria. That park might fit that criteria, but their committee one day decides they don't want to do that, or their boss is on vacation, he needs the final approval and he's not around to do anything. Any number of things happen. A deal goes bad, in their portfolio, and they don't want to do deals like that anymore. And you don't know that. These things happen all day long with buyers, and it's hard to predict. We're on phone calls with these buyers all day long talking to them, but so many things happen. It's hard to predict who the right buyer is for the right property in any given day or month or year. And so what we've had so much success doing, is that we run this process where we expose the property to everyone in the marketplace, and we get them 5 weeks to understand the property and ask all the questions they want. And what that does is it allows us to make sure that we have gotten offers from everyone, even the ones that we, like you said, we thought maybe this buyer was the right one. It actually turned out to be this buyer. We're exposing it to both of them. We see who wants to compete, and they offer their price, and we see who offers the most price, the highest price. It's really, for us, just to sidetrack into the Yale process. It's really about getting all the buyers to compete, and really, having them submit their best foot forward, and then deciding from there who the right buyer is. We have a deadline, we have a call for offers. Offers are due on a specific deadline. It might scare some buyers to hear this because they like off-market deals where there's no competition, and they, want to sweet talk the seller. And I get that. I'm nothing against that process. What we provide as a brokerage is we have a seller who's willing to sell, and we know the price he's willing to sell it at, and we can deliver it to you. If you are a small buyer, or you don't have a huge acquisition team, or you just don't have good deal flow, that's where the brokerage comes into play, and we can have a great deal flow for you. You know exactly what's going on. We've done all the due diligence for you already, and so it's a good value add for buyers who aren't seeing a lot of deal flow. And so in that process, if you're a buyer and you want to stand out, those are, as we said, those are kind of the things that work for you. I think we do a lot of listings, and a lot of buyers come back and keep buying deals from us because they like that process. They like the fact that we do the due diligence up front for them. We like that it's a fancy package. They know what they're getting themselves into. There's no surprises. And as far as the sellers, what they get is after a 5-week marketing process, they get 5 to 10 offers, something like that, where they know what the market looks like. They know what their property is worth. We have exposed it to the whole market. They know definitively what that property is worth because the market has spoken. And that's kind of our job as brokers, is to definitively tell you what the market values it at, because these are what the buyers are valuing at. These are what the buyers are offering. So that's something we do really well in terms of our process and exposing it and having a call for offers deadline. I don't want a long-winded tangent there.
No, it's good to share that. I mean, it's a thorough process to really find it.
You just went through it yourself.
I just went through it, right? You didn't just make assumptions and be like, well, here's what's going to be. It's like, no, we're going to find out what it's going to be. And then at the end, you had to say, was I happy with it or not? And if you would have brought me an offer at X and I wanted 1.2X, well, then I didn't have to take it and all that. So, I mean, I'm curious what percentage of the time, if you could share, our sellers, it may not just unreasonable, but the sellers not get the price that works, or do you have it happen? I know I have another friend who's a broker at a different company, and there's a deal I really liked.
Yeah.
I knew the deal.
Okay.
And he called me and he said, hey, do you know this deal? I said, yeah. He said, I just got the listing. I was like, no way, because I'm calling you first. And I'm like, I'm at my desk and I get up and I'm like, I'm putting on my jacket. I'm like, I'm on my cell phone. I'm walking out the door. I go, refresh me on the occupancy. He tells me 50 occupied out of 130. Here's the rent. And then, okay. And I'm just like in my head doing this.
Yeah.
And I said, what's the price? And he's like, 5.2 million. And I was like, no, it should be. I'm like, did I get the cap rate wrong? And I was like, it's supposed to be like 2.6 million. And he goes, well, the price of the listing is what it took to get the seller to list it, not the number that we pitched him of what we thought it was worth. And I'm like, oh, so I'm sitting back down. I'm taking my jacket off. And then I went through the numbers. I'm like,
right.
that's like a 2 cap or 3 cap. That's even worse than in my head. And he's just like, would you just do me a favor and make a low ball offer? I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I'm not getting in the middle of this. I'm like,
Yeah, that's
just to reset the pricing. So in that case, the seller was unreasonable. The broker knew it, but and hoped he'd get him to drop the price. So in those scenarios, would you just not take the listing, or do you like, well, we'll try, and then
Sure.
So
yeah, I mean, that's one wonderful world of being a broker, is you're taking it from both sides, from both the seller and the buyer. So yeah, of course, we have sellers who are unrealistic. I mean, that's their job, honestly, and they're trying to get the most amount of money for their property. You can't fault them for that. It's our job to, they can sell it for whatever they want to. It's their property. It's our job to tell them, from our experience with buyers in the marketplace, here's what we think a buyer will pay for it. And we can, have side conversations with buyers where we're not telling them about the property, but we're telling them generally the market and the occupancy and what do you think. And so we can get real data that says this is what this property is worth. And we have, just to back up, we have a whole team of underwriters who works with us. It's not just 10 brokers in a room. We have a whole team of underwriters, a whole team of marketing. It's actually a fairly supported company in terms of other people besides the brokers who are working towards, helping the sellers, helping valuations and so on. So you get a seller with an unrealistic expectation. Your job as a broker is to tell him what the market will pay for it. And so he can take that information and do what he wants to with it. I think if the property's worth 5 million and he wants 10, and you say, okay, I can get you 10 million, you're doing a disservice to both him and any buyer you talk to. I mean, it's about wasting time, to be honest. At the end of the day, all I have is my time. That's the only thing I have control over. I do my best to close deals. I do my best to work with people. I do my best to solve problems. But the only thing I really can control from start to finish is my time. Who do I give my time to? And so if you are telling a seller you can get them double what the property is actually worth, you're wasting his time. If you're going to a buyer and you're saying, look at this deal. Oh, and by the way, the list price is not the real price, or the list price, should be the real price, even though it doesn't make any sense. Whatever it is, you're wasting the buyer's time. That's not the hallmark of a successful brokerage career, unfortunately. You got to be honest with everyone. Surprises kill deals. You just gotta be honest. And so, you can work with people, and I would never, if we're off by a little bit, you let the market decide. You think it's worth 5 million, he wants 6. See what happens. You take it out, you have buyers compete, maybe you can get up that extra, 20% or so. But if you're talking about double or triple or something ridiculous, I mean, you got to have an honest conversation with people. Yeah. That's total.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because that's what I did in this deal. I'm like, this is 22 minutes from my house. I'm like, I'm not even going to drive over there and look at it, because we're just so far off.
The worst thing about that is that, I mean, nothing against this broker, but that broker will have this listing for 6 months or whatever that term is. It'll expire because it won't sell, and for 6 months, he will be telling the seller, oh yeah, we're getting you the price. We're getting you the price. And the seller will believe it for 6 months. And it'll take another 6 months for him to realize maybe that price is wrong. And so that deal is now off the market for a year or more because the seller has been told something that is just not true. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, there's a deal I've been looking at. I looked at my email 2 days ago, and it was August of 19. So almost 3.5 years ago. And we were chasing the deal, and the guy is seller finance and just a seller direct to guy actually built the park, back in the day. And he did a basic analysis, revenue minus expenses, NOI plus future potential income of all the 20 vacant lots I never filled, rounded, low cap rate. He goes, so about 1.57 and change. He put in literally in his email, say, 1.4 as is, where is. And I look at him like, my offer was 850, right? But he was at 1.4.
Okay.
Well, I'm still talking to this guy.
Okay.
And since then, he listed it with 2 or 3 national brokers.
Okay.
Then a wholesaler who I'm familiar with they all lapsed. And the prices come down. The price went up at one point. At one point, it was like 1.7. Then the prices come down, and then a wholesaler had it tied up at $1 million and brought it to me recently. And I said, "This is years ago." I'm like, "I'm at 900," and they wanted another 100 on top. So I wanted 1.1. I'm like, I don't think I can't even get to 950. I'm at 900. Well, they didn't move it.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go around them, I knew the guy direct and, like personally knew him, but they didn't, so then recently that wholesale contract expires. I let it cool off for a period and I reach out to the guy. Hey, is this thing still available? And he just listed it again with not a national broker. Not that there's not good local brokers, but if somebody's got a Century 21 business card, they're probably supposed to be selling single family houses, not 7-figure, or in this case, close to mobile home park. And he listed it for 1.2. He knows that I know that the wholesaler had it a million because we toured the property and he saw us. He goes, "Were you just in my park?" I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I don't want to go around the other guy. We'll work with the, but then after that guy let it lapse, I figured he'd call me. He didn't. He listed with another guy, jacked it up 200,000. I'm like, "You're going to be selling this park for the better part of a decade."
Yeah.
And I'm a good buyer there. I mean, I own 2 parks in this town.
Okay.
Right. So like like 8, I'm like, I have staff.
The first move should have been to call you.
Yeah, exactly.
5 years ago.
Well, and we tried to buy it 3 or 4 times direct over the years, but he's just insistent on a price that unfortunately for him, the price is worse every day because the cap rates, right? So in financing, so I'm like, my price is going down, and yours is holding firm.
Right, we're going up. Yeah,
he's not increasing rents. He's not sub-metering. He's not bringing in homes. Right. So it's like you have an asset that you're not improving.
Right.
Your property taxes are going up. Your insurance is going up. Your maintenance is going up. Your homes are getting older.
Yeah.
The time continuum, the gap is spreading, man.
I mean, I'm sure you deal with a lot of sellers. We deal with a lot of sellers too. That's our business. All we do. We don't manage. We don't do anything else. We're just dealing with transactions. Some sellers, they tell you they don't want to sell. They don't sell. They don't want to sell. Sometimes they do what they don't want to do, or they're doing what they're saying they're not, what they don't want to do. I don't think this guy wants to sell. I mean, I don't know him at all, but he just doesn't want to sell. I think he likes the attention from brokers and wholesalers. That's my guess. I've had a lot of those people who love to talk, love to waste your time. Looking for a friend, exactly. Don't actually want to close on something. It's pretty crazy. I mean, people who want to sell are motivated to sell, and they will compromise and they will get the deal done. If you are a buyer or a broker and your seller's going the opposite direction, I don't think he wants to sell. That's my opinion.
He needs to, because 4 years ago when I didn't give him his price, he told me my kids are going to inherit it. My kids want to run it. Well, then 2 years ago he called us. My kids don't want to run it. And that's when we told him his price was, that was like 1.5. And that's when he listed the national company. And we're like, "No, man, you just go ahead and list it. If you can get that." Right. I think I said something along the lines of, "If you sell for that price, tell the broker he can sell my whole portfolio because he's a miracle worker." And I didn't sell my whole portfolio. Right. So it didn't work out, but I'm going on a tangent, but it's my show, so I can do what I want, I guess. But well, Ken, what other tips can you give us, or other wisdom for the market as far as what you see, or for tips for buyers or for sellers, maybe to get their property ready for sale, or what are insights you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, as always, to get a property ready for sale, the more stabilized it is, the better. So, raising rents at a reasonable level where you're not, scaring people in terms of rent control, but you're doing normal market raises. Infilling, bringing in homes, you've done a whole podcast on that. That's a whole other, show. But, if you can do that, that's great to add value, to increase property values. Just getting as close to stabilized as possible. And also, just for all the mom and pop owners out there, if you own the property for 30 years, chances are your records aren't that great. So maybe take 6 months or a year and work with an accountant and get 12 months of a P&L together, as opposed to off the top of your head on a napkin. You're not getting credit for something that is not on paper and not, written by an accountant. Buyers are motivated to get the best deal possible. You need to have backup information, substantial information to say why you think your park is worth what it is. So records for sure. That would be a great thing to do for sellers.
Call for direct. That's how you sell your property.
Okay. Well, this is the beauty of the industry. You have all these people in the industry. Sometimes your friends, sometimes your competitors. It goes back. You do the thing. all the time.
No,
Um,
no, I think that's good. And one thing I want to mention that I just was at the Biloxi conference last week, and I was sitting there with a broker, and I asked him what he was seeing in the market. This is a loan broker, not a sales broker.
yeah,
And he said right now, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, he said, we've hardly done a deal in the last 6 months because they are really wanting pristine quality and they want pristine records. So your advice to Ma and Pa helps them sell because they get good records, but it actually helps me buy and helps me pay more because I can get better debt if your income is real improvement. So even though I generally don't want to pay more, I'm willing, if you want 2 million, I can't pay 2 million if your records are junk. I can pay 2.1 if I can get a loan.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's just an interesting thing that a lot of people don't think about is like, if you get good records, I'm going to pay more.
Yeah, absolutely. And how much does rent manager cost? I mean, what does that cost in terms of
not very much. I mean, it's more but then any property management software, I feel like the real cost is the pain of learning how to use it and the machination of using it. But I mean, any professional buyer or seller, you should be doing that. But that park we just sold in St. Charles, the seller that sold it to us, he built it himself, 50 years ago or whatever. His records were handwritten. He was an engineer, civil engineer by trade. His records were on grid paper.
Okay.
But they were pristine. And he's the first person I've ever seen. I got a whole long list of seller deliverables in the contract. He's the first person I've ever seen that had every single item, he even had blueprint, because he had blueprints, he had surveys, he had plats, original title work. It's stuff that's like a red herring just to like buy me more time, right? He had all that stuff and he sent it in a big box, and he had some sort of alphabetization or a numbering scheme to make it more organized. And you know what? Everything was matching. Like he said, here's my written revenue and expenses. This person has a late fee. It's here. They pay here, promise to pay here. It matched up with his bank records. I'm like, he was a paw, right? But no, he should have owned 50 parks. He was so diligent, but this was like his baby. He had a shop in there. You get away from the wife and go tinker in the shop. He had 3 snowblowers. He had 4 weed eaters. He had 2 lawnmowers. He had 9 shovels. I'm like, why do you have 9 shovels? He's like, because I forget one where I left it, and I need one, so I go to Home Depot, I buy another shovel, and then I find it later. And he's like, I got 9 shovels. He had 5 tape measures, in the same shop, all that stuff. But anyway, that guy had very diligent records. It made it easier for me to buy. So my point is too, he didn't need property management software, but he was the exception.
Fair enough.
But
you come across those every once in a while. Fair enough. I mean, I love the deals where they have their own system, but they do it and they do it right. Sometimes those are the parks that are the best parks. Some guy who builds the park, he's a background in construction, knows everything about concrete, and the park is beautiful because of it. I mean, doesn't use any Excel sheets, but it's a great park and everything is accounted for. Sometimes those are the best ones out there. Absolutely.
I bought 2 deals. I bought a deal from a concrete guy, and he lived in the park. So the deal I just mentioned that you had helped us sell, and then another deal that we still own, both were I feel like these are the best deals to buy from a ma and pa who don't understand market rent, don't understand market cap rate, don't understand infill, but other than that, run the park better than you can do because they start one baby. So I had at least, I think just 2 that I'm thinking of right now where I'm like, I don't think I can run the park better than them, other than they just never went to go find and buy a home. So I can just fill the last 5 or 6 lots, and they raise the rent $5 every 5 years. If I raise it 25 or 30, that's not egregious in most markets, but it moves the needle.
Absolutely.
It's like, man, I just want to try to keep the same love and care on the property that you did.
No, I mean, look, they're not building any more parks. I wish they were. I wish they were developing stuff. I mean, it would change the dynamic of the business completely if suddenly there was more inventory, but it is what it is. They're not building more parks. The ones that were built were often built by mom and pops, and it was their baby and they loved them. And so absolutely, if we can continue running parks with the same care that they built them and ran them with, we'd be in good shape. Sometimes the industry gets in trouble when they don't do that, and they kind of treat it as something at arm's distance, and they don't care as much. Those are the best parks. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. Other stuff to add. I mean, look, we like sellers and represent sellers. I'll leave it at that. As far as buyers, if you're a first time buyer, obviously, it's hard to get into the space. So tips and tricks, have your financials together, have a proof of funds, have a schedule of real estate, even if it's not in MH. As a broker, when I'm looking for a good buyer, even if I haven't met you or know you or work with you, there's plenty of things you can do to put you on my radar. Schedule of funds, proof of real estate, so I know you can close. Going to the park is a great thing to do. I mean, even if you want to buy, and there's tons of them out there, 10, 15, 20 space park. I mean, it's not going to be a money maker, but if there's a local park, you can kind of tip your toe in the water, understand things, have a deal story. You come to me and you say, I own a 15 space park, but I've infilled before, I've dealt with rent increases, I've dealt with sewer issues. I know what to look for when I'm doing DD. That puts you ahead of a lot of people who just have a lot of money and don't know what they're doing. Anything you can do to really, because I pass a lot of stuff to the seller, anything you can do to make the seller comfortable about who's taking over the park, the legacy continues, that they understand how parks work. And so during due diligence, you see something normal that's not going to be strange or unusual to you. You know what's normal, you know what's not normal. Those are kind of some of the things you can do as a new buyer to stand out. And then go to conferences. I mean, I think it's a fairly expensive ticket, but the conference in Las Vegas, MHI Expo, a lot of people there. It's a lot of networking, a lot of good information and advice you can get there. And then there's conferences all over. I mean, every state convention, every state has an MHI convention. Go to that. I mean, those states would love more members. Even if you don't own a park, you're thinking about doing it. Right. Those are not expensive at all.
Yeah, some of those are like $125, $250 a year.
Yeah.
And for pricing, I think MHI, my pricing is different because I got a booth and got several people about it, so it's like $550 or something. But I think it's like $995 a person. So it's not $5,000 or $10,000. So it's not inexpensive, but it's
you're not throwing a dinner every night.
What's that?
Assuming you're not throwing a dinner every night.
Yeah, well, I don't have the $30,000 or $80,000 dinner, how much it costs. I'm getting the burger and a beer on the street, man. But one thing I want to mention that you hit, but I want to hit it a little harder there is for new buyers. I have a lot of clients that are first time buyers or even not even before that perspective and call me, or just not even clients, just a bunch of people just checking in with me and picking my brain. And I'll tell them, like, I don't ever want to overpay for anything. I said, but sometimes you might need to overpay or at least pay retail or buy a deal with more hair on it for your first deal so that you can get some experience. But also then when you call that broker, and I have one person in particular, and she was buying this deal a little too heavy, but she knew brokers are blowing me off. And she's like, I'm going to overpay. And it was not a big deal. And so it was $550. She was paying, it was probably worth $500. She's like, I'm going to pay. And she had a nice day job and could afford it. She's like, if you fix it, it was going to be worth $7 or something. It wasn't going to be worth $2 million, but she was going to buy the one. So the next time she calls you, she can say, hey, Ken, I'm looking to expand my existing mobile home park portfolio. Sure. That is way better than, hey, Ken, I've never bought anything before. You're really busy. You just said on a podcast, your time is all you have. I'd like to steal your time to talk about this $10 million deal. And I got $8 in checking, but I'm going to syndicate. So right. getting that one, bird in hand. Right. I told her that's going to move the needle with brokers. Cause I remember I used to call brokers and it was, even if I had, it's hard, cause I don't have, and I tell them, I can't buy, my cost of capital is not the same as some of these players, right? I can't pay the highest price on every deal, and probably not on any deal, unless you mentioned earlier reasons some of the buyers didn't buy, something going wrong in their portfolio. Well, like this one guy I was talking about earlier, I can pay more than the next guy for that park because I already have a manager, I already have a maintenance team, I already have salespeople, I already know the market, I already know the city, I've already done the zoning review, I already know that park, I already got a guy that'll service the lagoon. Like, I'm kind of ready. I already have a local bank, I already got the money ready. Like, I could probably close this deal in 30 days, but not at 30% over the price.
Well, sometimes
maybe 5 over, maybe 10 over compared to the other guys.
I mean, sometimes assurance of closing is the thing that gets the deal done, especially for a deal that's been overpriced and sitting out there for a year or something like that. Seller's frustrated. You come in, you say, I can close in 30 days at 5% or 10% less than your ask. That's pretty convincing, So if you are a buyer and you know the market and you can prove that, and you can prove an assurance of close, that's definitely something worth talking about with the broker, and something that the broker will talk about with the seller. Absolutely. And look, if you know the deal, you like the deal, you've been to the park, you know everything about it. As I said before, put some hard money down. I mean, it's a lot of buyers don't like to do it because they just don't like to be pigeonholed, into committing to a park. But if you know you like the park and you're willing to commit to the park, put something down, put some hard money down. I mean, even if the seller doesn't know what to think of you, he's at least thinking he's going to walk away with something.
How much are you talking there? Like if I put 2,500 down, is that going to move the needle, or do I need like 25,000 down on a deal?
Look, it depends on the size of the deal, right? So if you're doing a $30 million deal,
well, that's a huge. But let's say it's a $2 million deal. Do I need to put 50,000 down? Because if I wanted to put 50,000 down on anything, and I have a client that's put 250 plus down on deals firm, and I'm like, you guys are crazy, but they do it. And a lot of them came out of multifamily, so they did it. But so we helped them. One guy in particular, we said, put 250 down, but we need to have a few outs in the contract. If it fails in sewer inspection, zoning, survey, title, we get the money back, or misrepresentation. And in this deal, the seller misrepresented and we were able to prove it. We got the 250 back, plus we were able to sue for additional damages because that was in the contract as well. But he won the, ended up being a bad deal. He won the deal. He won the deal because he had 250. It was like a $5 million deal. He had 250,000 down. I was like, dude, that money talks. But what's the minimum I can get on a $2 million deal? What's the minimum that I should put down to really get to the front of the line on hard money?
I mean, it depends on how much exposure there is, depends on how big the line is. But I think by and large, there aren't a lot of buyers putting money down. So it doesn't have to be a crazy number. You have a $2 million deal. Hopefully your earnest money deposit is at least 20 grand,
right, at least 1 to 2%. Yeah.
So I would say if you can put 5 or 10 down as hard money, $5,000 is hard money, 10,000. That's more than a lot of other people are doing. Absolutely. It shows commitment more than the money itself. It shows commitment. It shows that you've looked at the deal and you know what you're doing and you're willing to commit to it. It's really what it is. You're not putting the whole purchase price down. You're just doing a small percentage. Right. In the grand scheme of things, I'm not trying to say 5 grand or 10 grand is not that much money, but in the grand scheme of things, if that's what it takes to win a deal you want already, there's no reason not to do it. Absolutely.
No, that's a good point. I'm going to consider that more. One of the lawyers here played professional poker for several years, so he's really always talking in poker terms and odds and everything like that. And he made the point one day that every time you put earnest money down, even if it's refundable, there's some you basically lost some money, because statistically you have some risk the seller's going to be difficult and the title company's not going to release it, and then you got to go spend money to get it released. And I recently chased a deal, and it was $100K down. And I had not seen all the parks, and I just kind of got a bad vibe when I had an acquaintance who contacted in the business that had told me some information about the park that made me a little queasy. So I had the contract signed by them. I was supposed to sign it in the morning and wire $100K. And that's a lot of money, right? And so I was like, man, so I ended up getting up early and I hit the road and I went and looked at this other park. And I drove about 2.5 hours, and I got there and there was 6 parks, and I turned around and I drove home after 3, and I didn't go look at the other 3.
I know exactly what deal you're talking about.
Yeah, I know you do. We talked about it too, but and nice enough guys all around. But I was just like, I'm not paying that price anymore. So I'm glad I didn't put the 100 down. And they hired a big law firm. I was negotiating with 2 lawyers back and forth. Finally got the contract signed. So they had some money spent on legal. Right. I had a lot of time spent on it.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? If I put the 100 down and then they get pissy that they spent legal, I had this happen on a retail deal one time. The seller's like, we spent all this money on lawyers and you guys didn't even really give it a good shot. And we had 25K down. They wouldn't release it. And the title company, even though the contract says it's the sole right of the buyer for unilateral termination, if the seller says there's a dispute, don't release it, the title company is going to be like, we're going to just interplead the funds into court and we're not going to do anything. And then you got to go fight or sue, or they try to negotiate you to chop. So I was like, when I heard that analogy about you already lost some money, I'm like, you know what? It rarely happens. Most of the time and I don't kill that many deals, but I've had to kill some deals.
Right.
So far, every time I've got 100% of my money back, but
Right.
I've seen people not. So there is a call to 1%, 5%. But if you put 5,000 down, even refundable, you already lost 500 if in the long run. I never thought of that really the same way, but I always will now. It's a really good analogy.
Sure. I mean, we can move on to something else in a second, but that's the downside. I think the upside is you win more deals, for doing that. You get deals that you wouldn't have otherwise won because you put something down, you put a little bit of hard money down. I would argue that it pays for it in some grand scheme in the long range. Yeah. I don't know.
No, you can just think of it as pursuit cost. I used to chase grocery stores, and we spent like $250,000. My partner was the money guy, but spent like $250,000 chasing grocery stores in Milwaukee. Had a bunch of sites tied up,
right? And
the market was just bad, and we couldn't get the retailers to come. And $250 in the hole. But he's like, yeah, whatever. I'll say if it comes back around. He goes, yeah, last year I lost 500, and then this year it came back. I turned it into 5 million because the same sites come back or the same research comes back. I'm like, you're playing with big dollars, but he kept a file of each deal with the sunk costs. So if they ever came back, those would then be deal costs to be reimbursed even years later. But that was the extreme example.
Now we're talking about a risk profile. How risky do you want your business to be?
It's each their own, but
it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what a buyer can do to separate. I don't know. I mean, it's fun. I mean, it's a fun business. I like dealing with buyers, like dealing with sellers. It's a fun business, but yeah, there's a lot of nuances to it. So it's a good time.
All right, Ken. Well, good stuff, man. I appreciate your time. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you after this?
Sure, absolutely. So Yale Advisors, yaleadvisors.com. I cover the upper Midwest, but there's a lot of great guys at the company. I would actually encourage you to invite some of them on, our debt guys and our equity guys. They have a very interesting take on the industry. But for me, my email is pretty simple. It's ken@yaleadvisors.com. One office number, 312-858-8906. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, I would encourage anyone who listens to this, go on yaleadvisors.com, see what we have, see how a good professional brokerage runs, and give us a call. I'm sure there's something we can help you out with.
All right, man. Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. We'll talk soon.
Bye now.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.